What do you do when the project's gone off the rails, the original contractor's gone bankrupt, and you've got three groups of stakeholders all looking for you for answers? In this episode, I'm joined by Andrea, someone who knows exactly what it's like to step into this chaos, take a breath, and build a path forward. Andrea shares the story of being called to the rescue a major UK construction project with emotional clients, exposed contractors, and no plan in place. She didn't just manage it, she turned it around. And then we draw a powerful parallel to her personal life. Andrea recently walked the full length of New Zealand on the Te Araroa Trail, a 3,000-kilometre journey that tested her planning, priorities, and mental strength. Whether you're dealing with complex teams, chaotic projects, or just trying to stay steady in the middle of a storm, this episode is a masterclass in staying calm, getting clarity, and choosing your next move with purpose. Welcome to Busting Roadblocks, the podcast where we break down the biggest roadblocks in business and help you clear a path to success. I'm Janet Charteris, your host and founder of JC Consultancy, where we help businesses remove barriers and unlock their full potential. Today, we get to hear from Andrea Salter, who took an architectural degree from Auckland University and travelled to the other side of the world to drive commercial building and building management projects for the last 25 years, with expertise in project management, quantity surveying, site management, commercial management, and your last role as Director of Development and Project Management APO Group. Now, I met Andrea in London, who decided I was fit for the brief and could join her flat where we lived together for almost 4 years, and that was 20 years ago. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks for inviting me along to your podcast today. Look forward to chatting with you.
Awesome. Now, I know your work experience centres around large-scale residential construction, and I used to cheekily tell everyone that you counted bricks, which is obviously not correct, but it was the easiest way to explain what a quantity surveyor was back in the day. Now, you've risen through the ranks and you've run multi-million pound projects and become quite the expert. I would call it fixer, really. So today we're going to talk about a troubled project. And from what you've told me, although specific to construction, this example has insights for general project management that I'm intrigued to dig into. Can you set the scene for us? Where are we and who are we dealing with?
Sure. So we've got a project. It's an existing client of mine, built up a relationship with them over the last few years, having delivered a number of successful schemes for them. And they've got this project up in Birmingham. I'm London-based, but their project's up in Birmingham. They've had a developer just go bust on them. And so they're left in this situation where they've put a lot of money in up front as the fund for this project. The developer's gone bust. They've got a main contractor who's about to start on site, and they're stuck with how they're going to manage this, who are they going to get to run the scheme.
So you've previously worked with them and they've used you guys as the main project management, and this time they went out on their own?
It was just a different route to acquiring the scheme for them. They are a large investor and they use different contractors, different developers across the UK.
So it's one of those, they've tried something a little bit different. They've had success with you previous, but they've tried something a little bit different. Hasn't worked out, and they've picked up their phone and said, Andrea, come help.
Exactly. They needed someone to very quickly step into the developer role. And given the relationship we had, they were like, could you get in here and help us get this project started and over the line?
Amongst other roadblocks, essentially we're looking at a project management that has been mismanaged, and the client who is now quite unhappy and probably, I'd say, bleeding money, because as far as I understand it, particularly with new construction, not only have you got the money that you've spent to get these guys on board, but you've also got the money that the bank is charging you in interest and the opportunity cost. So these are big investors, so they could be spending that money elsewhere. So ultimately, it's cost and profit that they're losing. It sounds like a big, chunky, multi-dimensional roadblock. How did you go about solving that one?
Yeah, so I think, as you say, there were so many parties involved as well. We've got a main contractor who's also feeling quite nervous now because the developer's gone bust. They're about to sign contracts. So they're like, do we have the job or not? So it was quite a tough situation for everybody involved. So I think for me, the first step was to get a project plan together from my side, understanding stakeholders, starting to build those relationships, because it wasn't just my client who are funding it. I've got a third-party client who we're building the new headquarters for as part of the scheme.
Yeah.
We've got the main contractor, and then we've got client-side consultants, mostly whom haven't been appointed formally at this point.
Wow.
So the
really
biggest thing, really loose, and everything needing to go very quickly because we're putting a spade in the ground next week kind of thing. They'd already started clearing the existing buildings off the site. So it needed to go quickly. And as you say, every day in construction that you're delayed, it costs money.
And did you have regulatory, like I'm assuming Birmingham has a whole different council and building management that you are now, as you guys taken it over, did you have to change any of that, or was that already done and you just had to align with what was already happening?
Just aligning with what was happening really with that, because Birmingham City Council, we'd already had the scheme had planning permission, had all the regulations ready to go. So that was all okay. That had further challenges down the scheme though when Birmingham Council went bust. And yes, which is not too unusual sometimes for places in the UK, but the council went bust, which meant that they stopped all services unless they were critical for the council, which made getting any planning changes approved was really difficult, getting them out and doing inspections and stuff. That was another set of challenges, but one we managed along the way.
So it sounded like it was okay at the start, but we've got challenges a bit later. So broadly you went and go, right, I've got to engage with all of these stakeholders and get them on board.
Yeah.
How did we do that though?
By meeting with people, understanding what their goals were, what they wanted out of the scheme, what's key drivers for those people, trying to get them on board and start to build a team. Because for me, with the construction, you need everybody to be on board and with the same aligned goals to achieve at the end.
Yeah.
For a project to be a success, everybody needs to be happy with the outcome. It's not about one person making all the money and everyone else suffering. It's about trying to come together, and when you're all aligned, it works a lot better. So really starting to build the team up with everybody. For me, getting consultants on board, that would help with the process. So that was the first step is stakeholders and understanding key tasks, goals, the financials of the project, the budgets, etc. to work with. And then from there, breaking it down into steps, putting a project program and plan together about when things needed to happen, by what date, sort of the key steps, just key decision making, because we've got a building that's half designed. We've still got to choose all the finishes in the building. We've got this third-party client with their headquarters. They also need to approve drawings and things like that. So definitely putting together a program with your key decisions, key milestones, so that we can try to change the project from being something that we're just completely reactive at the moment. We're just responding to things on a daily basis, to try and move it into a more proactive situation where we're ahead of the game. We know what's coming up and we can make those decisions in plenty of time rather than last minute, I need a decision tomorrow.
Yeah, so ideal. It's taking it from firefighting to, okay, we've already got this burning platform. It's burning on multiple levels, but let's break it down into sub-segments where we can go, right, I can manage that. I've got the people on board. I understand where I'm hemorrhaging, and I understand what needs to happen to get this back under control, but also get everyone aligned so that even if we still blow out at the end, because you've already started with a blowout, so you're now just managing the impact of said blowout, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I think the hardest thing when you have firefighting is prioritizing, because you do still have 55 elements you have to control, but one of them is going to be that key. If I can get that one under control, everything else will kind of flow from that. Which one was that for you, do you think?
On this project, the most critical one was actually the third-party client that was involved.
Yeah.
So building their new headquarters, because what was going to happen is on the existing site, they had their old headquarters on one part of the site. And so we needed to build their new facility and get them moved into that new facility before we could demolish their existing facility and start building on that piece of land. Wow. And that with the main contractor, the way the contract had been set up for my involvement was a certain time frame. And obviously if we delayed the contractor from being able to demolish that building, it would have had severe implications for my client. And that was the first thing that we needed to get complete on the site. So that all the focus went into that. We had a third-party client there who was very unhappy with the situation. Obviously, this is their brand new headquarters they've been dreaming about for the last, 10 years. They've had a developer involved that was pushing them along down this route, and then all of a sudden they've gone bust and disappeared. And, for me and the team picking it up, we're looking at a brand new project we haven't been involved in, all the history kind of gone. So really unhappy third-party client. So it was trying to get them on board and try and deliver them what they were looking for, but also worked with our clients' budget and requirements for the scheme.
Yeah, because I'm sure that, and this is just an assumption, it would have been easier to flatten the whole ground and start the build from ground up. It would have been the most efficient way to do it. But because that had been pre-agreed, you had to, even though you could see that's a clear saving we can make tomorrow, guys, you didn't have a choice on it. It was part of the contract.
Exactly, yeah. And it was a real key part to it, because if we could have just demolished everything and started the whole site from day one, that would have been a lot easier for us. But the piece of land their building was sitting on was owned by them, and until we delivered the new piece of building for them, the land ownership wouldn't change into my client's name.
Yeah.
So it was a real critical part to get the project underway. And to further complicate things, on top of their headquarters, we have circa 250 apartments. So trying to build a headquarters, get it waterproof, get it finished, get them moved in, and then continue building above in a safe manner, which was, again, one of their big concerns, is how do they effectively move their headquarters in. They have a lot of visitors, a lot of children involved in this facility, and how do we keep that safe for them whilst we're still building 250 apartments above? So that was another challenge for it.
Yeah, and I think for the listeners out there, it still sounds like there's heaps of fires, but because I know you personally, I know the way you'll approach it is, right, we're segmenting this down and I'm going to manage it in a way and delegate in a way that means all of this is going to be looked after. And I think, like, we could go through every single aspect of it and go, man, there's so much to all of it. If anyone's built a house, they'll know how hard it is, let alone 250 apartments on top of a headquarters, with the added complexity of not being able to destroy the other headquarters first. You've covered off the major issue. I'm assuming that you also got in and got stuck into the other parts. What was the end result? How did this land for the client?
At the end, this was quite a successful scheme for my client. Third-party tenants were happy. They moved in. They loved their new space, really happy with it. And for the client, beautiful apartments that, looked great at the end of the day. The main contractor was happy as well as a consultant. It was a good team effort by everybody to get the scheme delivered. And it's actually just had its first year anniversary. And what's really nice to see is the videos of everybody there having the rooftop party and enjoying the spaces that we put in. And that's what it's all about, is people enjoying those places.
So you set out to make sure that everyone was happy within the project, which actually isn't that easy, because usually even in small companies, when you're doing cross-functional teams, one person is begrudgingly happy, but it sounds like everyone came out successful. Yeah.
In the round, I think everyone was pretty happy with how it came out. So
when I think of you and I think of this approach, the reason I keep going up, and I guess is the helpful bit that I know you personally, is I know how you approach, for example, trips, etc., and it makes me think of a specific challenge you've recently taken on, which is actually the thing that brought you back to New Zealand this year, thankfully, because we got to spend more time with you this year, which was lovely. Now, Andrea took on the Te Araroa walk, which is basically walking the length of New Zealand, so from Cape Fleanga to Bluff, and not in a straight line. It's over 3,000 kilometres of walking, and I'm sure when you talk to some people about this, they would have thought you were mad, and why and how would you take this on? But I would say, and because I know some of the story and I followed all of your lovely posts on Facebook, there was a ton of challenges along the way. So obviously you have the big challenge. We've got 3,000 kilometres to walk. So just like this project, you've got this massive challenge where you've got to build this thing. How did you break down the TA to multiple small challenges that were manageable?
I think, for me starting out, I wanted to do Te Araroa to see parts of New Zealand that I've never been to, reconnect with nature, just see how it went, really. I think I'd never done any long hikes where I'd had to carry my own tent, my food, my cooker, anything like that before, other than I did a trial weekend where I went out for a night to see all my gear would work. So I set off a little, inexperienced perhaps, but thought, why not? We'll give this a go and see what happens. And I think from starting out, it was just to take it step by step, day by day, and just see how it went. And if I'd got a week in or 2 weeks in and I really wasn't enjoying myself, that was no problem.
Yeah.
But I think, just breaking it down into step by steps. And I did have challenges on it as well.
Yeah.
The first section is walking 90-mile beach in New Zealand, which involved like 3 days walking on sand, 30 kilometers a day, because you could only stay at specific places. And by the end of that third day, I had such severe blisters on my feet that I ended up in A&E
Oh
and was
no.
unable to walk and stand up. So yeah, it was a
big challenge. You're only
Yeah,
3 days into it and you're already in A&E. This is looking good, Andrea.
exactly. So after waiting 10 days for my feet to heal up enough, I then got back on the trail, and I eventually obviously made it all the way to Bluff. But I think for me, it was about breaking it down into steps and just thinking about, if I can just get to there, if I just get to there, and those little steps really, really helped me.
So a big bit is the big bit of prep that you did beforehand, because as you mentioned, you had to carry everything. So you had to carry, I think one time you had 10 days worth of food, your tent, your clothes, which I'm sure there wasn't many because it gets heavy. That for 10 days of hiking, that's a lot. That's a lot of prep to be thinking about. So you're breaking it down even before you've even started. You've had to think about, how am I going to make this as streamlined as possible? And then obviously mentally preparing yourself that you know it's going to be hard, so you're going to give yourself an out if you need it. But given that I know how mentally resilient you are, that was never going to happen. But you were going to do it no matter what happened. Was there any, outside of the first 3 days where we almost collapsed and failed, was there any like really major ones that you go, actually, this has solidified something in myself, and because I obviously can draw comparisons to this to your work. Is there any one thing that you went, man, that really tested me, and it makes me more the person who I know I am?
Yeah, I think on the trail, I must have been about halfway down the country,
Yeah.
and the news came out that very sadly one of the hikers, a girl on the trail, had passed away on a section of the trail,
Yeah, wow.
which is actually really upsetting, and it made me
Yeah.
question what I was doing,
Yeah.
especially doing it on my own,
Yes.
right? So it was quite unsettling for a while. So I took a bit of time, and I thought, right, and I had known where it occurred. It was in front of me. And I was quite nervous about walking it, especially on my own. So I had to put a lot of thought for me into that, about how I was going to do it, because did I even want to do it? Did I want to walk where someone had passed? It was really quite upsetting. It's emotional. It's just talking about it. It's emotional.
Yes, I bet.
Yeah. But yeah, so I looked at it and I thought, look, I want to give it a go. And I had said to myself, I looked at the maps and I was like, right, well, I've got these steps where if I don't want to do that section, it was on a piece where basically you're walking for 5 days. There's one in and one out.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I found some side roads. So if I needed to exit off, I'd made a plan to somehow exit if I needed to.
Yeah.
I could go backwards if I had to. I also decided I didn't want to walk that part on my own. So I'd been fortunate that I'd met some lovely people a few weeks before that. And so we walked it together, and we all had talked about it quite a lot because it was quite topical on the trail.
Yeah.
I was carrying all the safety gear. I had personal locator beacons. I had Garmin trackers, messengers, satellite messenger. So safety perspective, I had everything. I think it was just a little bit of a mental block, actually, to try and push myself through that.
Yeah.
And again, it was a day by day, take a step by step, get through this. And I think being with the people we were with, it was a good experience. And I must admit, by the time we passed the section where we knew she'd passed away, I got to the hut and I just burst into tears.
Yeah, I bet.
I was like, I've made it.
Yeah.
All that sort of pent up emotion and being anxious a little bit about it was quite a release at the end. But interestingly, it actually had turned out to be one of my favorite days on trail.
Oh, wow.
Because we were boulder hopping in a river, and it was so much fun, and I love it. I'm a water baby. I absolutely love being around water. And so it actually was one of the most fun days. So I'm really glad that I pushed myself, I challenged myself to do it.
And a challenge like this is massive, right? For multiple reasons. Obviously resilience and planning and breaking things down, and I guess pushing through the hard bits. When you're heading back to the UK and you're off looking for your next challenge, because I don't know what you can do as a challenge after that, but your next challenge, and particularly in business, what do you think were your main learnings about who you are that are really transferable to your next role?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, I think resilience is definitely one of my key things. I like keep going. I just want to do a good job. I think for me, that's something that's important, doing a good job. I think in construction, what I love is not just construction, but property development as well, is about creating places that people want to live and people want to be. It's about keeping clients happy, end users happy. I just think if you can provide a place that everyone loves and enjoys living and being in, it just adds that layer of happiness to life for everybody.
And I think just to add to that, because I think before you already knew how to look at something, prioritize it, and break it down. But I think what this shows, for me anyway, is that that's who you are as a person. You don't just do that at work. You do that at home, and you do it in your real life when it's just you and you're not there to impress anyone else. You're just doing it and you're going, right, I've got a massive challenge in front of me. Here is how I'm going to go from fright and flight to I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to figure out a way. So even though both of those are really quite specific examples, so one obviously in that construction and residential management side of things, and the other one walking the length of New Zealand, like, as you do, they come together in that no matter what you get put in front of you, you'll be able to go, give me a second. All right, I can break this down into manageable parts and I will make this happen. So I think it's a really useful example for people in normal management of business. And I can think of anything from an entrepreneur and going, I've got this whole business to run. Actually, you've got segments of the business to run, prioritize it, make it happen, right through to just life in general, right? Can you tell our audience how to get hold of you right now? Because I know you're heading back to the UK and I'm sure you'll be looking for an amazing role somewhere. How do they find you?
Yeah, I'm heading back to the UK in a couple of weeks. And first of all, I'm going to actually go and walk the Southwest Coast Path in England. So I hope there'll be a couple of months. But yes, I will be job hunting when I get back to the UK. People can find me on LinkedIn under Andrea Salter. I don't think there's too many Andrea Salters out there on LinkedIn, but you'll be able to see me by my previous experience at Appo Group and Wilmot Dixon.
Yeah. And we'll put that information into the episode as well so that people can find you easily and reach out to you if they have some roles coming up, because I think obviously I'm already a fan, so I think you'll be an asset. But I think for me this example has shown that it's who you are. It's not just something that you perform on a workday basis. So thank you for your time and sharing your experience with our audience, Andrea. If you found this podcast valuable, make sure you subscribe and share it with your network. And if you have a business challenge you'd like me to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn or at jcconsultancy.co. I'd love to hear your thoughts.